Hello and welcome to On the Record. Life under lockdown, a phrase that describes our new norm. 24-hour curfews and full weekend shutdowns to try and limit the spread of COVID-19. And if after a few weeks in lockdown you begin to feel anxious, bored, or having feelings you've never had before, that's completely normal. With more than a month in lockdown, there is still no end in sight. Experts say some 2.6 billion people are restricted to the confines of their homes in some kind of lockdown. We are conducting arguably the largest psychological experiment ever. And amidst it all, one thing is undeniable: we will pay for it. Evidence already suggests this will result in a secondary pandemic of burnout and stress-related absenteeism. So the question is, what can we do now to mitigate the toxic effects of COVID-19 lockdowns? Joining me as my guest tonight, experts in psychology, mediation, and conflict resolution to help us try and better understand and cope during these uncertain times. Tonight, we discuss the mental stresses of the lockdown. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. Our conversation begins on the other side of this break. The project really pays itself.
Correct.
They set up
at the conference, more at the school.
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV.
This is On the Record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. While countries band together to try and stem the tide of COVID-19, we cannot deny the fact that there is more than meets the eye with this pandemic. While we focus on the imminent economic hardship, we must remember there may be another pandemic on the way, or one we may already be facing. It's the issue of mental health. My guest tonight is a consultant psychiatrist, Dr. Timothy Barrett. Dr. Barrett, welcome to On the Record. Let's talk first about the symptoms of mental health disorders that people may be facing at this juncture. We've been here a month now, you know, in this lockdown phase. We all have our own realities within lockdown, but what are some of the common things that people are facing from a mental perspective, or maybe starting to see manifest?
Well, the first thing that is the other pandemic, one of the other two pandemics that I described worldwide, would be the pandemic of fear. And really what it is it's not fear of the virus, it's fear of dying from the virus. So it's the basic innate fear of death that is coming out now, okay? We are exposed to SARS and MERS and dengue and those things, bird flu, and because it has never frightened us with the risk of death so often and in so many people worldwide, we just don't know what to do. And so we have that fear of dying. With that comes the tendency that we have at first to deny the seriousness of what is going on. And I think we saw what happened in certain countries when leaders didn't really take it on and were in denial about how this was just going to go away. So you have the fear that leads to worry about what's going to happen about your future. When you combine that with the uncertain economic times, you have all the symptoms that come with anxiety that include physical symptoms, restlessness, irritability, loss of appetite, problems with sleep, and you don't understand what's going on because you're not accepting that, okay, I'm supposed to be worried. I'm supposed to be concerned. Things are not usual as they were. I try to resist normal because normal changes from moment to moment. But things are not the usual way. And our habits have been disrupted and our control has been taken away. And that's the key. Our habits have been disrupted, our control has been taken away.
When you have lost your freedom,
right,
per se, and you're talking about freedom, I'm going to use the word, in the normal sense, I mean, you haven't committed any crime or there's nothing wrong for you to be, you know, legally locked away, but you can't go to the beach, you can't go to do things that you normally do. It creates a different kind of feeling, and I think maybe are we accepting, or is that a part of some of the thing or some of the issues that we're facing now?
Yes, that's the lack of or loss of control that's been taken away. We need to be able to put this in perspective, but we're so egocentric as we approach these things. This is what I want to do. Why can't I do this now? That we forget that we're part of a bigger picture. We're part of a country. We're part of a family. We're part of a neighborhood, a community, a country. In order for the country to do well, I have to accept my role, which is to listen to the reasons why these restrictions are necessary, go through the discomfort that comes with these restrictions because they're going to be uncomfortable. And I have to accept that I'm not going to be comfortable with them. But so what? Discomfort means, for me, an opportunity for learning and for growth. It means an opportunity to be creative, to do something else that I would not have normally done, usually done, so that I can continue to live while we're going through what's necessary in order to flatten the curve and then eventually get business back up and running.
How do we begin to manage things, and you spoke to one of these already, fear, panic, anxiety, related to, again, as you so rightly put, the fear of dying, but also what's going to be my future? I'm on the cusp, or I've already lost my job, or family members, or even those who have family members and loved ones who are on the front lines out there working every day. You just sometimes are fearful. How do you begin to deal with things like that?
Well, acceptance is key. Once you accept the fact that I'm supposed to be afraid at this time, the world is afraid, I'm afraid with the rest of the world. The question is, what do I do? If I feed the fear, it's only going to get worse. What you feed will live, what you starve will die. So I have to find a way to be hopeful and creative, starve the fear thoughts. In fact, when they come knocking at the door, don't invite them in. Find a way to create hope. Read something, listen to something, share something that's hopeful. Be grateful for what I have. One of the things that I saw the other day, it was talking about showing gratitude and appreciation for what you have right now. You know, if you're not infected with the coronavirus, be grateful. Give thanks. If your family members are not infected, be grateful. Give thanks. You're restricted in your movement, so you can keep on being grateful.
One of the great offenders, and it's a tool that we use so adequately to communicate and to connect, is social media.
Right.
But while this positive, wonderful thing is there, it's feeding into a lot of that fear and anxiety and panic because of the things that we're inundated with through social media, through our phones, on WhatsApp, and so many other things. These things are coming into or coming at us all day long. And sometimes this is all we have to rely on. We're on social media because we ain't got nothing else to do.
and that's unfortunate. I love that statement because we don't have anything else to do.
So we think.
Exactly. We haven't created anything else for us to do. As I said earlier, I didn't let bored or boredom be used as a term in my house when my children were growing, because I told them there's a trillion things to do. Pick one of those and do it. You can't be bored. Life is too short to be bored. I'm running out of time as I talk to you. So we have to have a healthy approach to social media and use it for keeping in touch with family and friends, for getting facts from credible government sources, but not just picking up everything that's coming your way and checking it every minute. Oh, see what they say there, and my goodness, and every rumor, misinformation, disinformation, prank that people put out there simply because they have, as far as they're concerned, nothing else to do right now.
There's another segment of the population who initially were, thought to be just at risk, but certainly we're learning not so much. But the elderly among us, people who we have to take care of, our parents, our elderly relatives, that's a strain on a lot of people. Because normally, in the course of life, you're looking after the elderly, but it's a lot more difficult now because of the constraints and even because of the fears of bringing the virus into their environment. So how should people deal with that?
It's very important for us to recognize that the older people and their higher risk category, that has to be recognized. But we also have to make sure that they understand it. So ask them and explain to them and make sure we create the environments for them that allow them to lower their risk. I just had a colleague from the UWI who's recovering from it, and I lost a colleague, a very close friend whose birthday would have been around this time, to coronavirus. And so I understood that he had conditions that put him more at risk than the average person, plus his age, But the older people, we have to, now remember, the virus can kill younger people as well.
Yeah. Okay. That's important to remember.
It's important for all of us to remember that.
Working from home, a lot of us, myself included, are working from home, sometimes in conditions that aren't suited for working from home. How do you strike that balance between, oh, hey, I've got this free time, but I've got this work to do, but I've also got these kids running around, I have all these other distractions. And so mentally, for a lot of us, you're torn. Because I know I've got work to do, but naturally I'm home, so it's a different environment and feeling.
Yeah, we don't have the usual cues that we would have in the workplace. So what you have to do is create a temporary structure for your day and provide a template for yourself that you're going to use throughout the corona period. These are the times I will work. These are the times I will take a break. These are the things that I will do when I work. And these are the things I'm going to engage in when I take a break. And then this is family time. And so you've got to make sure. I'm encouraging my daughter, who's still in university, not to just lie down in bed because there's no urgency. Get up, get structured, get through something in your day so we don't go through this time of distress and have nothing to show for it. When you go through, if all you have at the end of the day is relief from distress, you haven't grown, you haven't learned, you haven't understood life better, if you haven't done the kind of self-reflection that will help you to understand where you want to continue to go after this, because everything about the world and the world's economy and the world's relationships geopolitically, that's going to change after this. The world is not going to be the same.
One of the things that we are having to deal with is the grief of loss. And not just individuals who are dying from this dreaded disease, but loss in general. People continue to die every day, family members, friends, and you cannot do the things that you normally did to express your grief, to express your sympathy. You can't even, you know, as a friend or family member sometimes, even go to wish, you know, to give your final farewell. How do you handle something like that? You're already dealing with the loss of the person, but you can't even outwardly express that in the ways that you were accustomed to.
Well, there are two categories, and then there's a third that I'll mention. First, if you have the loss of someone who was corona or COVID-19 positive, then the rest of the family would have been in quarantine because of the contact. And so there is no contact with the deceased by the family member during the time of quarantine. And so that is going to, I mean, dramatically restrict the kind of expectations, the activity, and with doing the kind of things that you would normally expect. Then there's losing a family member to, say, violence, as I had a family member, or someone just died yesterday who didn't die from the coronavirus. But you still can't assemble, do the rituals, have the funerals in the normal way, have the repast in the normal way. And so it's very important to realize that your grieving is going to be different. Grieving is individual. We help each other to feel better when we're grieving, when we share someone else's grief. But grieving is individual. This time you have to expect that it's going to last for much longer. And there are going to be symptoms that occur maybe months, maybe years afterwards that still relate to the inability you have right now. Now remember, this whole change that the world is facing means change means ending, okay? When things change, it starts with an ending. Ending equals loss. Loss equals grief. So the whole world is grieving.
That's a good point. Dr. Barrett, we're going to take a break. Stay with us. On the Record continues right after this. Welcome to On the Record.
Looking for more On the Record? If you miss our Thursday showing at 8 p.m., join us for the re-airing on Friday mornings at 10, and then again each Sunday night at 8:30. Or go to our YouTube channel and catch up on all of our past episodes. And then like our Facebook and Instagram pages for a preview of upcoming shows and get a chance to ask your questions. Just look for On the Record.
This portion of On the Record brought to you by Executive Printers of the Bahamas Limited. We print profits for you.
Welcome back to On the Record. This segment is brought to you by our friends at Executive Printers. Whether you realize it or not, the low mood, insomnia, stress, anxiety, anger, irritability, emotional exhaustion, and depression that you or someone you know are currently facing can be the result of the lockdown. All of these are symptoms of psychological stress. Studies show that low mood and irritability specifically stand out as most common. My guest tonight is consultant psychiatrist Dr. Timothy Barrett, who's here to help us try and understand these symptoms a bit better. I want to key in on our healthcare workers,
Yes.
As well as essential workers. But let's start with the healthcare workers. They're the ones who literally on the front lines dealing with this every day, dealing with even the fear of contagion. You know, for them, what is it like? What kinds of things are they experiencing, and what are the coping methods that you suggest for these folks?
Well, I've had a talk with a couple of them, and their concern is really mainly how much risk am I taking when I'm going to work? And it's not only the risk that I'm taking, but am I risking my family members? They're brave because they say, well, I have to go to work, okay? And they realize that the work has to be done. You have workers in mental health, and you have workers in physical health. You have people on the front line. You have the surveillance team that has to go out there and make sure that they are in contact with people who are suspected of having COVID-19. I mean, they're unheralded and unsung, but boy, they're at the top of my list when it comes to where praises should be heaped. But I think what the healthcare workers have to realize is that, yes, they're doing an essential service for the country. And for two reasons, they're going to have to be very strict in the way they interact with persons, whether they are persons who are COVID-free or who may have be a carrier or who may have symptoms. Number one, if they're not very strict and they're exposed, they didn't stop it at a point before it got to the staff members, and they're exposed, then the rest of the staff members, they're going to all have to be taken out of the system.
So now it creates a deficiency.
We are going to lose human resources, essential human resources. All right. That's the first thing. Secondly, for their own health and well-being, they have to be very, very scrupulous about paying attention to the details to make sure that they do whatever they have to do as they have been instructed to do, because I'm sure that in the health care organizations and in the various departments, they have gone through training and instruction as to what to do to keep yourself safe.
This entire experience has created something that we've never had to deal with before. We have, curfews. Right. We have specific days to go shopping. Yeah. We have to stand on lines. We have to be orderly. But yet, as a people, we still many times do not want to follow the instructions. We want to still go and do what we want to do. We want to circumvent the law. We want to rail against these restrictions and provisions for our own, selfishness, I call it.
It is.
What, at the end of the day, is this going to create, or are we going to become any better for this? Are we going to become more disciplined? Because where I said, we're very undisciplined people. We don't like to follow rules, and it creates a lot of issues for us.
Well, we don't like to follow rules locally. I see people here who sit in their cars and don't strap on a seatbelt and drive any old kind of way and park anywhere, who go to Fort Lauderdale or Miami and obey all the rules that are there. So there's a lack of respect for local that we have to now change. Call it what it is and change it, okay? We have to respect local authorities, local government, local rules, local laws on the streets, and pay attention to that, because each time we do it, we enhance the Bahamas, we enhance ourselves, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We make ourselves better. We make it better for our communities, we make it better for our children, we make it for the generations that are going to come behind. If we don't understand from this that your autopilot, the way you used to do things, which was totally undisciplined, has to be now reined in, and you have to create a structure and create a new set of habits with built-in discipline that you are responsible for, then we've lost this opportunity to really create a new good world for ourselves.
Do we have responsibilities as well as individuals to call out people who are doing foolishness or refuse to abide by the because sometimes you see things happen, your neighbor throwing a party or someone jumping a line, and we stand there or we sit there and we do nothing. we talk about it privately, but we don't call out those individuals.
Well, personally, I mention it. I mean, early on, when we were still, I was still going to the bank. I haven't been to the bank since. People were standing outside the bank, and there was 6 feet between each person. And I was at the bank on Mackey Street, on Royal Bank on Mackey Street, waiting for it to open. And then this gentleman comes in between me and, say, you. And I said, sir, excuse me, you're invading my space that is going to keep me and you safe. Me safe from you, and you and you safe from me. I said, oh, I just look at him. I said, please. And I insisted, and he moved. But it didn't matter to him. So it seems as though there's a certain segment of the population that does not care, and that's unfortunate, because our chain is going to be as strong as our weakest link. And what the Prime Minister has been trying to tell people is, don't be the weak link, okay? Be the one who says, I'm keeping my physical distance. I'm wearing my mask, okay? If I'm going into public, I'm going in public for something that I have to go for. I'm not just taking a joyride.
To go hail someone.
Yeah.
As we are in our individual homes and individual spaces, what kinds of things should we look for in ourselves and in other people that may indicate some kind of mental distress? And once you identify those things, then what?
Okay. Problems with not being able to sleep. What happens is our thoughts, which are usually apocalyptic or cataclysmic, okay? We worry about the end times, and, all the people who read the Bible tell you for sure that these are signs of the end times.
My grandma used to say these are the last days.
These are the last days. Well, for me, every day is my last day. I got to just hope I wake up tomorrow. All right? And that's not to, downplay anybody's faith or belief, but my Bible tells me that the last day is going to come as a thief in the night, so I'm not going to have any awareness of it. Mm-hmm. But if you notice that people are not sleeping and they're becoming irritable, they're not eating like they normally would, they're easily brought to tears, all right? Even though the family may be doing something, playing a game. The other day we played Monopoly. One day was softball, one day was volleyball, one day was Monopoly. This was during the 5 days, all right? But if you can't get someone to join in, and they're isolating even within the context of isolation, then that's something that you have to be aware of. Speak to them about it. Call a healthcare professional and find out, okay, this is what I observe, what can be done.
And you can reach someone through the COVID hotline, correct?
Yes, you can.
Okay. And then, for me, I always think about, the economic strain of this all. Mm-hmm. You have men, women, providers who have found themselves without jobs, without a steady income, now having to seek public assistance, having to seek, social assistance. That, in some instances, must, I think, affect even the dignity of people and so many other emotions that come along with that. How do you deal with that? Even if either you are, the person in that position or you're with the person that's in that position. How do you tackle something like that?
That's one of the most difficult things, because if you were living paycheck to paycheck, if you did not have the discipline of saving, then that means you don't have anywhere to turn to. You don't have a nest egg. You don't have anything put away. If you're the provider for the family, and especially if you're male and you take provision seriously, this is going to attack you and hit you in the face and challenge you in terms of your manhood and your ability to provide for your family, you're going to feel like a failure. You're not a failure. There are things that are being offered. If people would only listen, they would understand that there are areas of help. You have to lose your pride and go and get the help. See if there are family members or friends that can help. There's a family situation I can think about right now who I'm going to be willing to help for a while because I know they're going to be in some problems. We have to get neighborly now. We have to get neighborly. We have to remember that, in the old days when you borrowed a couple eggs or a cup of sugar or, a glass of milk or something, we have to start doing those things.
Going back to the things that made us communities.
That's right.
Dr. Barrett, thank you very much. We're out of time for your segment, but I do want to take this opportunity to thank you for coming and sharing this information with us.
My
It's
pleasure.
very valuable and helpful. We have so much to consider, but as a people, I think sometimes deliberately overlook the mental health aspect of our lives because of the scourge and sometimes the stigma that's attached. And so thank you for continuing to do what you do. And I hope that this discussion tonight will encourage people to consider not just their physical health in all of this, but keeping their mind safe as well. And thank you so very much for your information. I'm sure we'll have you back a little later on down as this continues to unfold, because we do not know at this point what the future is going to hold. So thank you for coming in and spending this time with us this evening.
My pleasure. No health without mental health.
Good way to end. Stay with us. We are going to continue our discussion with another expert right after this quick Hello and welcome to On the Record, and the balanced, true, and open debate you've been looking for. And welcome back. You're watching On the Record. This segment is brought to you by Private Business Contractors. While for many being at home may be a breeze or an unplanned vacation, the reality is for so many others it's not so simple. Home can be a place of contention, unresolved family issues, and far from a safe haven. Unfortunately, that safe haven for many has been work, school, a friend's house, or a place of worship. But now they have been stranded in the one place they cannot find peace. That's their homes. My guest for this portion of the show is a barrister, arbitrator, and mediator. She's a team member of Alternative Dispute Resolution Bahamas. She's Ms. Caryl Lashley. Welcome to On the Record. Tell us a little bit about the organization that you represent first.
Okay. Alternative Dispute Resolution Bahamas is an organization where we do training in terms of conflict resolution. Our thing is peace. We believe that each of us has within us good, kindness, empathy, and we all, each in us, have something bad. And so what we want to do is encourage the good to thrive. We want to feed the good. And we recognize the bad because we don't want to mask it and pretend that it doesn't exist. We all have fear. We all have some irrational emotions. But we want to train who wants to be trained, you have to want it, to recognize what they need to do to avoid conflict. What we also do is we provide arbitrators and mediators for people who really want to preserve relationships and resolve issues before they become really contentious.
And how is your work so important at a time like this, and how are you able to reach people?
Well, we ask people to talk and we listen. We encourage and facilitate conversations. We believe that what we have to do first is recognize what people are saying and then know that what we do is the result of how we receive it. But we have to recognize it.
What are some of the things that you find are most prevalent in this particular situation? All of us have been in lockdown for about a month. We are finding ourselves in environments that are familiar in terms of physical space, but certainly not the length of time we're spending in these places, and certainly not in the company of people, sometimes loved ones or spouses, children, you know, that we love, but you're not accustomed to being in the home with them from dawn to dusk to dawn again.
Well, what we find mostly is violence. And what we think of when we think of violence is physical violence. But what we're talking about today at the home is verbal. It's violent words, violent language. And that's what we really want to try and recognize and temper in this time when we're all the time, all together.
If you find yourself in a position where you're losing your temper, you've lost your temper, what should you do?
It's okay. I have lost my temper. I am sorry. You know, under normal circumstances, I would not have done that, and I really regret it. I am sorry. That's what we have to do. We have to apologize. We have to recognize it first and then apologize. We're not big on that. And so we have to take a deep breath, determine what we could have done differently, and apologize. That goes a long way.
And what should be my reaction on the receiving end? You've lost your temper with me, you've done something or said something that offended me. I'm now angry, I'm now hurt, but you've said, I'm sorry. What should be my response? Because I have a role in this too.
Right, and usually you don't have a response that you have to give. I could see that you're not ready to accept that apology, and I'll say, you know what? I realize that you're still upset, and that's okay too. But I'd really like us to get this resolved, and so I'll give you some more time, but I'll really come, and then I'll come back, and I'd really like us to talk again. You can't force it to happen. We have to work at it. We have to work at it together, and I have to have the responsibility because it's I who did it.
And that's hard for a lot of people, because if you're the authority in the home, or you're the adult, or whatever the situation is, that's hard sometimes for people to say sorry. I know within myself I'm wrong, but I can't always articulate that. And people express their remorse in different ways. Does it always require me to verbalize it?
It doesn't always, but at some stage it does. Because if I express my remorse by buying you something, or if I express my remorse by doing something that I might not otherwise do, that mightn't be an expression of remorse. It might be a way that, from your perspective, that I'm trying to get over you and let you brush away what I did wrong. I have to take responsibility for my actions, and especially in a time like this, because it's possible and even probable that I'm going to fly off the handle again, because I'm in a situation which is tight, because I'm in a situation that I'm not familiar with, because I'm in a situation that I probably don't like.
What can we do personally to mitigate and mediate? I know in myself, I always tell people, I know when I'm about to lose it, because I feel it's like a freight train coming down the track. But what can we do to stop that? And particularly when you know it's coming, you feel that anger building up, and you've just had enough, and you're about to blow.
Pause.
What are some of the things that you need to do?
Take a deep breath. Pause. Practice the pause. And that's what I tell people all the time, just practice the pause. We don't have to respond all the time. And even if we think we have to respond, we don't have to respond right away. Close the teeth and pause.
What about walk away?
Walk away is good, but you have to come back. Mm-hmm. Walk away is temporary. Mm-hmm. It doesn't resolve anything.
When kids are involved, is it a little different? Do you handle them differently?
You do, but they're people too. They have to be able to express themselves. They have to be able to say, I'm stressed too. And as a parent, we can't say, well, what are you stressed about? You don't have any bills, you don't this. They have emotions too, and so we have to respect that. And I know that's hard for us, because we're so accustomed to telling them, do this, do that, do the next thing. And they're outside playing, and they're to school with their friends, and they're doing fun things, and they can't now. So we have to make a bigger effort to accommodate the children because they depend on us. That's our role.
How important is the positive thinking in all of this? Every day I'm turning on CNN, I'm watching the global pandemic. You know, I'm watching the local news in the evenings, I'm watching what's happening on social media throughout the day. There's all this gloom and doom around me. I may have just lost my job, or, you know, I'm worrying about how I'm going to pay these bills and provide for myself, my family, or, you know, people around me are in distress. So all around me there is this cloud of despair. At what point, or how do I now shift to thinking positively? Because it's easy for you to say that, you know, think positively, but my reality isn't a positive place.
Firstly, we have to always remember that relationships matter. If we left where we were working on good terms, if we were a good employee, the likelihood of us getting back to work is very high. If we weren't good, the likelihood is low. And so we have to look at ourselves and determine how do I get out of this cloud? What do I have to do to shake this off? So we need to know ourselves. We need to spend some time in this downtime really, to look at ourselves, see what we need to do. There's lots that we could still do, even though we might not have a job, even though we might not have the resources that we had before. But we have to remember that relationships matter. And because those relationships matter, we have friends, we have people who could mentor us, people who we could speak with, people who could facilitate a dialogue for us. And that's what we need to do. And that's what we do at ADR Bahamas.
And I was, just before we go to the break, how important is that talking aspect? Because a lot of times we internalize, especially men, we internalize a lot of things. But, you know, how important is that to speak out and to talk, or to get advice, or just sound off?
It's very important because we don't read minds. And when I say, what's happening? You say, oh, nothing. I know it's something. And I ask you tomorrow and you say, no, nothing. Then I become frustrated. And so I have to draw on all of my strength not to fly off too. And so the dialogue is extremely important, and that's why we need to call on people who can help us to have the dialogue. It's not easy, but that's what it's about. We need a mediator sometimes to assist us, to facilitate us in getting the results we want, because the relationships matter.
Very important point. We're going to take a break, but we've got some more things to discuss. But certainly I want to use this second portion of the interview to talk about how people can reach you and the services that you offer. Stay with us. On the Record will continue right after this break. Project really pays itself back.
Correct.
They set up
at the conference, the school.
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV.
Staying with us tonight. This is our final segment of On the Record. We're back with more ways to resolve conflicts in the home while on lockdown. My guest is mediator Mrs. Caryl Lashley. We are inundated with so much information nowadays, whether it's on television, on our phones, and it's being driven primarily by the media, whether it's traditional or social media. What role do you think the media is playing in all of this, in creating some of the anxiety, even hysteria that we may be facing?
The media is just doing its job. When I've had enough, I shut it off.
And I'm so glad you said that, because sometimes we don't know when to shut it off.
You have to know yourself. You have to know when it's enough. And sometimes you get news that tells you one thing from one source, news that confuses you from the other source, And so you have to determine yourself what you need, take the pieces you like out of it, take the pieces you dislike, and you throw them away. Because otherwise, it'll make you crazy. And then, what do you do?
Mm-hmm. For me, there's certain times I like cartoons. I mean, that's the kid in me. And so certain times to escape, I'll turn on a cartoon. And that's sort of my escape. Is that a healthy thing to do? Does that?
I think so, because you have to find a way to release the stresses that we all face on a daily basis. I'm high all day, so when I get home, I don't want to watch anything serious. I want to be laughing. I didn't laugh today. So when I get home, that's laugh for me. I don't want anything else serious to invade my space.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's important, because I think sometimes we put ourselves in these positions because of what we allow into that space. What about those people who are the conspiracy theorists and we all have that friend who's always calling, oh, you hear this, you hear that, do you know this is happening? How do you handle those types of people?
Those people are trying to draw you into their storm. They can't handle it and they want to draw you in. You know, we have a saying, misery likes company. Mm-hmm. Don't do it. Do not let them draw you into their storm, because they'll make it your storm. And not only will they have drawn you in, they'll then think you drew them in or drew somebody else in, and they'll use your name. And so we have to know when it's enough and back off.
Mm-hmm. The importance of keeping in contact with your support systems, your friends, your family, not those people who try to draw you into the storms, but the people you regularly come in contact with, even if it's your coworkers or those people who are your support system. How important is that?
It's extremely important, both for you and for them, because it creates and maintains a state of normalcy, especially in these times that are not normal. And so you want to maintain as much contact with the people that you are accustomed to making contact with on a positive way as you can.
For those who find themselves in conflicts or abusive situations, whether it's domestic abuse, child abuse, verbal abuse, physical, mental, what should you do? What kind of help is there available out there?
Well, apart from the crisis centers and safe houses, we have to remember that when you're in an abusive situation, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the person who's abusing. And so we have to remember, I did nothing wrong. It's not my fault. And you need the strength that you have to get out of it. And that's difficult, I understand. But our role is to be able to help those people. And so as a mediator, we would say, we're able to facilitate a conversation. The other side very rarely would like to have that conversation, but that conversation, we don't let up. We said, try again. You cannot be defeated. You have to maintain enough strength to get across the road.
How do folks reach out to you if they find themselves now in a situation where they need a mediator, they just need some help? How do they find you, and what role do you play in all of this?
A mediator is a facilitator. That's what we do. We facilitate a dialogue. We facilitate a discussion that will enable you to make your relationship work. And we go to the future and we let the past go. That's our role, to encourage positive dialogue for a future relationship. And we're at adrbahamas.org. And by email, CAE Lashley at adrbahamas.org, admin at adrbahamas.org, 394-7800, 424-8664. And the good thing about us is that while I am the face of ADR, we can find you somebody else. You don't have to choose me. Mm-hmm. I'd like you to choose me, but you don't have to. So you have to also be comfortable with the person that who's facilitating your dialogue. That's very important, because that also helps in reaching a strong, peaceful, successful resolution.
One of the things you said at the beginning, you brought it up again, was sort of finding that peaceful resolution. We seem to be lacking that in so many ways. I I recognize we have issues with conflict resolution as a whole, but just finding that peaceful place, even in our own individual lives. Have you been able to identify what has taken us to this place or caused us to be here? You know, I used to hear my grandparents and parents talk about the Bahamas being such a peaceful place, and we were such a peace-loving people. I don't see those people anymore.
Do they exist? They do, and I think what we do is hide behind something. We call ourselves a Christian nation. We hide behind God. I'll leave you to God. That's what we say. We don't need to leave you to God. We need to deal with our issues ourselves, and that's what we're not doing. And so once we determine that we're going to deal with them ourselves, we'll become peaceful because it's our job as a person to do the right thing.
A lot of times we speak in the context of New Providence and what's happening here in the capital, but you know what I want to sort of figure out or talk about what's available for the Family Island communities, because some of those communities are very different. They have different challenges. They come from a different place in terms of the makeup, even their way of life and way of living is a little different from us. But what about the folks on the Family Island and help that's available to them?
Well, we've done training for people in Grand Bahama, Abaco, Long Island. We've dealt with those islands only so far, regrettably. And hopefully we'll be able to do more as time goes on. However, people are people. And once we realize it and remember that people are people and we're all the same, we have to draw out the best in each of us. And all we need to do is take the time, practice the pause.
I like that. Practice the pause.
And we'll get it done.
At the end of all of this, do you see a positive way forward in the way that we are going to deal with each other? Like, you know, we're going to spend a lot of time together. We're going to discover some things about ourselves and about each other that we like or dislike or whatever. But, you know, from your assessment, do you see some positive outcomes from all of this at the end of the day, from where you sit and from the work that you do?
I think definitely. The answer is definitely resounding yes. Because what happens is we do a lot more introspection than we would have done in the past. We try to understand ourselves. We want to be peaceful. We want to be happy. But we remember it starts with us. It's not the other person who has to change. We have to change. And more if we say that, we'll see the peace.
And even when it's done, if you would have recognized, for instance, that maybe, you know, your relationship with your spouse or your siblings or your children is strained, or you would have recognized some things from being around each other for so long that you probably didn't know existed before or you didn't recognize before. You know, will there still be that opportunity, or will the opportunity still be there, or the timing for you to come together and say, hey, while we were in lockdown, I realized we have some serious fundamental problems. You know, will that be still a good time to address? I ask that because sometimes, you know, in the moment when something's happening, hey, it's a good time to tackle it, but I may decide to wait.
Always better to wait. It's better to wait till the next day even. If we're having a conversation, you say something to me today, and it puts me off a little bit, and I'm not really sure why. I go away and I think about it, and then come back to you tomorrow, and I'd say, you know, yesterday you said so and so. Is this what you meant, or is that what you meant? First of all, we got to make sure that we understand what they meant. We might have heard something that they didn't intend us to hear. And then having found out what you really intended us to hear, we then say, I was upset by that, or I was hurt, or I was happy that you said it. But you're able to express how you felt once you know what it was that you should have heard.
Good point. So sometimes when, you know, I hear people say, well, I'm happy you expressed how you felt. Sometimes if I could steal a phrase, I feel some kind of way because I'm not quite sure if that's authentic or, you know, they're genuinely happy, or maybe that's a put-off, you know, to what I would have said.
Sometimes they don't know. So yeah. It's good to come back. It really is.
Good point. Practice the pause.
Practice the
I'm
pause.
going to take that away most definitely. I want to thank you for really coming today and spending a little time with us and talking about it. Thank you for the work that the organization is doing, and we encourage people to reach out if they are in need of your services or just want to talk or to mediate. Or need the mediation. Thank you very much. Continue to do the good work. It's very important.
It is. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
And that's going to do it for tonight's episode. Special thanks to my guests, Dr. Timothy Barrett and Mrs. Caryl Lashley, as well as to my production and technical team. Of course, to you, our viewers, a very special thank you for joining us each week. Be sure and catch us next week, same time, same place, right here.